Welcome back. It's exactly 1 p.m. So this is where on the final lap of our training today. So thank you all for being patient, and I hope you're learning something. But we'll go right into the new topic, and that is about intellectual capital. So, if you've never heard about intellectual capital, you're hearing it for the first time today, but it's relevant to what we're going to be learning in the subsequent week. So, what is intellectual capital? So, intellectual capital is the sum of, so this is like the simplest form, so that the reason why I like to break down stuff like this is so that it becomes part of you. So, intellectual capital is the sum of everything everybody in a company knows that gives it a competitive advantage, that gives the company a competitive advantage. So, when you're talking about intellectual capital, you're relating it with a company. So, everything that everybody within the organization, within a company knows, everything they know, all their experiences, all their knowledge, all their intellectual property, assets, all those things put together that gives organization a competitive advantage. So that is why a company today will go and buy another company, and will retain certain amount of people. And if you are, let's say you do government contracting a lot, or you're involved in government contracting, or you are a government contractor, you see that all the time. Another government contract might win the contract, right? And when they win the contract, they retain certain amount of people. So when they retain those people, the reason they retain them is because of their skills, is because of their intellectual capital, intellectual assets. They want to make sure that there's a continuation, that you have a landing team, you have an initial team that will help you make sure that you hit the ground running. You don't want to do anything in vacuum. For instance, if you're a leader and you take over an organization, you don't want to get to an organization and you're firing everybody. No, you want to retain certain number of people that will help you pick up from where the previous person, your predecessor, left off, right? You want to make sure that you can hit the ground running. So those skill set, those people that are left in place are the people that possess the intellectual capital, right? They have the thing, so they have what it takes to gain a competitive advantage. So as simple as it sounds, is the sum of everything, the total number of everything that everybody knows in an organization, the sum of everything that everybody knows in a company, that gives that company a competitive advantage. That is what intellectual capital means. All right. That is what intellectual capital means. The sum of everything that everybody knows, right, within the organization, that gives them a competitive advantage. Now, remember, that said, intellectual capital is an intangible value, meaning that you can't touch it. Like nobody can touch a toxic knowledge, the knowledge that is in your mind, your experience. Nobody can touch it. All right. So it also covers human capital. So intellectual capital also covers human capital, and the value is inherent in its relationship, and that is social capital. So what is social capital? Social capital is basically is all about the relationship among people. For instance, I can give you, because of my social capital, in the place where I work, I can just walk up to, and you know sometimes email is good, sending text message or Teams message is good, but sometimes to get the job done in my 20 years professional experience. I can tell you this. Sometimes, in order for me to get a job done, I can just walk over to someone and have a conversation with the person, and I get that job done that easy, rather than sending an email. So I like to send emails. I send emails, but sometimes I can just walk up to your cubicle and say, "Hey, this is what I'm going through. You know, you know, can we solve this problem? I'm not able to get this done." And that person, depending on how the relationship you have with them, or the social capital that you have, that you've not been antagonizing them, or you've not been very rude, or you've not been very obnoxious. If you build your social capital, that can get you somewhere. So as a knowledge management practitioner, you have to start building your social capital, the way you relate with people. Learn how to relate with people within the organization. Learn how to, and that will help you. A lot of the things that I know, a lot of the information that I have is by reaching out to someone. Always learn to have that water cooler, they call it water cooler conversation. Some people think it's office gossip, but sometimes you're trying to learn things from, if you're not interacting with people, but also learn not to share everything, right? Especially things about yourself, about your family, about your personal stuff. Because the truth of the matter is, everybody loves you. I think I was sharing this yesterday. And everybody loves you until they are your competition. Everybody is your friend until they're your competition. When they are your competition, that's when you begin to know that, okay, you were never my friend in the first place. Okay. I've had a job interview where the person that I know that interviewed for the job didn't even talk to me, for a long time, until everything was over. Okay, so everybody is your friend until they become your competition. So, but learn to gain social capital, learn to interact with people. You cannot do knowledge management in vacuum. You need other people, you need to collaborate, you need to engage with stakeholders, you need a lot of people. So social capital is important as much as intellectual capital, right? So everything that is left when an employee goes home, and that is about the structural capital. What is structural capital? The processes that you put in place, the system that helps you do the job. We're talking about AI, for instance, we talked earlier. Those are structural capital. The organization puts those in place, of which intellectual property, is one of the components of it, right? So structural capital, when you're talking about intellectual property, structural capital is one of those. All right. So intellectual capital is essential, for a company to gain a competitive advantage. All right. So know that that's important to know as well. So while you're talking about your knowledge capital, also know what intellectual capital is, what social capital is important. So now, the next question that we want to answer is, what is knowledge management? So what we learned in knowledge management fundamentals earlier, I just want to kick the podium on this. Okay. So knowledge management overall helps you with, enables the creation of, the creation, the distribution, and the exploitation of knowledge to create and retain a greater value for a core business competency. That is basically what knowledge management is all about. It's the process that enables you. It, Knowledge management is an enablement. It's an enabling factor within the organization. It's like a support. Knowledge management is a support. But when your knowledge management matures, it goes from just being a support to a strategic asset. We talked about that. So knowledge management is a process that enables the creation, the distribution, the exploitation of knowledge to create and retain greater value from core business competencies. So what does that mean? What does that mean? How is that possible? How is that possible? Because knowledge fundamentally, knowledge management fundamentally is supposed to be a support function. Somebody talks about a problem that the business is facing. Now, with the knowledge management support, you are able to now provide solution. You're putting things in place in order to solve that problem. We talked about SharePoint. For instance, last week we talked a lot about SharePoint as a collaboration tool. So, people are finding it difficult to collaborate. What happens? The organization uses their SharePoint as a means to collaborate, for people to reach out to each other, for people to do, knowledge management process to do what they do. So KM is a process that enables the creation, the distribution, and the exploitation of knowledge to create and retain greater value for the organization. So you're looking at this at a strategic level within the organization. You want to make sure that your KM is aligned with the business objective, with the business strategy. Any project that you want to do, first of all, make sure that you can tie that to the overall business objective. Now, we're going to look at the importance of KM. We're going to look at the relevance of KM and also how, the significance of it. So KM promotes an integrated approach to, number one, identifying, capturing, and evaluating, retrieving, and sharing all the enterprise information asset. So KM is that vehicle that helps you to promote that. So let's say an organization or your company, for instance, have a database. But KM is the one that will point you to that program. Your KM program is the one that is going to point us to where those knowledge assets are. So now, how is it relevant? By creating efficiencies, by helping you become productive, and allowing you to work better as an organization or even as an individual. All right? So one thing that is important for you to know as a KM practitioner is we never reinvent the wheel. No KM person reinvents the wheel. What does that mean? If something is already working, we look for a way to make it work better. We're not going to recreate our own. It's not a competition. You're not trying to be, the smart Alec. No. If something is already working, share. So that's why a lot of, KM processes is about sharing, knowledge sharing. So you share knowledge so that I can use it to do something with it. So I'm not trying to recreate my own, ways of doing things. All right. If something is already working, yeah, I can use it to do something better with it. But I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. So as a KM practitioner, don't reinvent the wheel. Don't reinvent the wheel. All right. So that is how you make things. Because what happens is if somebody shares their expertise and you're not projecting that expertise, you're boosting that expert's morale. You're boosting their morale. You're helping them shine their light and say, okay, this is the subject matter expert for this particular thing. Go to this person. Go to this person. If you need help here, this is your point of contact, right? There's no need recreating, or reinventing the wheel. So the last one here that I'm going to point out is the sharing of knowledge and cross collaboration helps to increase value. All right, it helps to increase value that, to better offer, a better customer support. When you, offer effective and efficient customer experience, it creates value. It helps both value for the organization and also to the customer. right? Because you put things in place that will help to better manage the way things are done. All right. So there is a quote that I have here. There's a quote that I have here, and it was I picked this up from the Darwin magazine, and this is where this is why this is important. This is why this is important because this week we're trying to make sense of everything that we've learned last week, all the concept of knowledge management that we've learned, all the the framework, all the model. This quote here, I like it because it kind of brings everything together, and it says knowledge management is fundamentally active. People need to have access to the right information at the right time. Knowledge management needs to be proactive, tightly integrated with the business processes, and integrally related to the day-to-day operational activities. That's all the things that I've been saying since morning. All the narrative I've given, it boils down to this fundamental perspective by the Darwin's magazine. And this thing was written in 2002 that knowledge is active when people needs to have the right, have access to the right information and at the right time. And it's not just storing the information. You want to make sure that people, that information that you put in there is right, is correct, is accurate. That is where a human person comes in. That, okay, what information you have in the repository or in your data, in your knowledge base, is the right information that should be there. And that information should go to the right people. And you're putting it into the business process. That's how you become relevant. Because now, not only that your knowledge management is, proactive, you're thinking ahead of time. So, before issues arises, you've already put something in place to solve it. But it's also inbuilt into your business processes. You put it in the business processes, and it's helping your day to day, how you do your things, how you do your business, how you implement things. Knowledge management is helping you solve that problem. Knowledge management is helping you do your day to day business. Knowledge management is something that helps you to operate effectively and efficiently. So, as a knowledge manager, or as a knowledge management practitioner, you have to do your work. You have to align your project in such a way that it's very difficult to get rid of you. Why? Because you're involved in virtually everything within the organization. And nobody is going to pull you to say, hey, come and do this. And no, from day one, you have to look for a way. You have to, because of the type of project you're listening to people, you're interacting with people, you have the social capital. So when somebody says something, you say, oh, yeah, we can solve that problem. Yeah, you can use knowledge management. Yeah, your problem is, because you don't have a knowledge management program. So yeah, we can put a knowledge management program in place to help you drive the way you do things. So from your day one, doing knowledge management or being hired, you have to make sure that you make yourself relevant and valuable. You have to project yourself. So every project you're doing, you're thinking about, okay, does this project tie to the overall strategy? Does this project, is it, can I see myself? Can I see my role? Can I see the role that I perform now, the role that I play now? Can I see it in the overall company strategy? If you don't see it, then there's a problem from this jump. There's a problem already. So you want to make sure that everything you do, you tie it to the overall strategy. So I'm going to end this slide here, and I will take us to the learning management system.